Can we roll the clip, please? There should be a soundtrack.
Marvel in classic wildlife films. From the iconic animals of Africa to the herds of North America, it would seem wild nature is doing fine. Yet many of these programs fail to mention one hard fact. Most of these animals live on the brink of extinction. Starting with Yellowstone National Park in 1872, safe havens have been established. But these last bastions of nature have become ever smaller, and now they are biological islands, surrounded by ranches, farms, and development. Scientists call this landscape fragmentation. As a result, wildlife populations have been decimated. Large predators like lions have declined by 99%. Tigers are almost gone with less than 3,000 survivors. Grizzlies, mountain lions, and wolves followed a similar path in North America, where the American bison plummeted from 60 million to a few hundred. But there is hope for the Earth's last oases of wild nature. If island habitats are connected by corridors, parks can once again function as nature requires. It's called connectivity conservation. It's the cutting edge of conservation biology and the best hope for wildlife around the world. The Wild Ways documentary will examine the scientific basis for connectivity and follow biologists who are trying to reassemble fragmented landscapes, reconnecting parks and preserves so they can function as they were intended, as safe havens for Earth's remaining wildlife.
Thank you. As Harvey suggests, if we protect half the planet, or any portion of that we can achieve, a scientific reality is now becoming apparent. We must link protected areas together so they can once again function as the larger landscape that gave birth to all life on Earth. Starting with E.O. Wilson's work that created the field of island biogeography, there is a new understanding. Ecosystems that are isolated from each other have real, absolute limits. It's called the species area curve. The size of an island determines the number of species that can live there. This relationship has been demonstrated time and again on islands around the world. The problem is, the protected areas that we have spent the last 100 years creating are now biological islands, cut off by human development from the larger landscape that used to run from sea to sea. That's known as landscape fragmentation, and the emerging field of conservation biology has demonstrated the implications of human domination of every landscape on Earth. The most definitive study of fragmentation was conducted by the eminent tropical biologist John Terborg. When he learned about the plans of the Venezuelan government to dam a large river in the Orinoco system, he went there to study the forest. As the impounded reservoir rose, many islands were created. Terborg watched and measured as the island ecosystems, no longer part of a large whole, fell apart. The smaller islands crumbled more quickly, but in the end, on even the largest islands, this formerly rich forest system was reduced to a pile of sticks covered with vines. No wildlife was left. What happened? By removing the top predator, the harpy eagle, monkeys overpopulated. They ate everything until the armadillos died out in this impoverished ecosystem. Then the ants took over and ate everything else. This trophic cascade has been observed in isolated ecosystems around the world, from Yellowstone Park without wolves to African parks that became too small to sustain lion population. So not only does size matter, but biomes need all their native components to survive over time, including the inconvenient species that sometimes interfere with human ambitions. Luckily, there are solutions to fragmentation. By creating corridors and linkages between protected areas, we can avoid the worst consequences of island systems. Populations can then interbreed and repopulate areas stressed by drought, fire, or flood. Animals can move between seasonal habitats for food and water and in response to changing climate. Wildways is a look at promising large landscape initiatives around the world. We will feature the grandfather of connectivity projects, Yellowstone to Yukon, as championed by Harvey Locke. We'll study a promising young initiative, the Kavango-Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, where 5 southern African nations are trying to connect 28 preserves across 300,000 square kilometers. We'll also explore the Bhutan Biological Conservation Complex, the most comprehensive conservation network in the world. Bhutan has protected half the country and created a network of corridors connecting all of the preserves. In East Africa, we'll examine the Serengeti National Park in Tanzania and the Masai Mara in Kenya, and study impacts to existing connectivity that threatens the world's greatest wildlife migration. Finally, we'll see a continental vision of connectivity as the Wildlands Network imagines a series of wildways spanning North America. The idea of connectivity is catching on. Beyond the connectivity initiatives we will be able to profile, there are many projects, both large and small, the world over. In Australia, the Great Eastern Ranges. In Central America, the Mesoamerican Biological Corridor. In the ocean, the Eastern Tropical Pacific Seascape that Russ mentioned. Green belts in Germany, the Alps, Pyrenees, and Cantabric Mountains. This is a vision of conservation that needs to happen across the planet. Conservation at scale, the grand scale at which nature functions. And make no mistake about it, the stakes are very, very high. The wonderful parks and preserves we have made over the last century are necessary, but not sufficient. They are a gulag archipelago for nature, a collection of disconnected islands that cannot and will not survive into the distant future without rejoining the larger landscape that the Earth used to be. We are at a tipping point. Now is the time we must, as a species, decide whether or not to leave enough room for other species to live on this Earth. Are we the only creatures that matter? Is the Earth merely a system to be exploited for the benefit of humans? In the next decades, we have the opportunity to make the right choices here. I hope and pray that we do. Thank you.